A lot of people ask me, Bouncy, what's your opinion on scary clowns, especially scary clowns in horror movies or haunt actors that are scary clowns? Do you hate that? Are you mad at that? And I'm here to tell you, no, I love scary clowns. And I actually have such a big respect for haunt actors. And I myself collect and love horror movies. And I even was writing a comic book that was horror themed. So you would be surprised, but I actually love horror. And I'm making this special spooky edition of types of clowns so that we can get into horror clowns and talk about how they are a valid type of clown. Horror is a fear invoking medium that can be used to create a wide variety of entertainment. From movies and television to books and video games, it is an art form that people turn to for all kinds of reasons. And horror's popularity throughout history manifests in many different and unique ways. Some people say there's a bit of a psychology behind these things, that we like to experience the simulation of fear in a safe environment, or that we get a sort of thrill or even excitement from these types of simulated experience that horror can bring us, or even that we seek a sort of higher sensation when viewing or even interacting with this type of media. Whatever the case, people consume things they find scary for all sorts of reasons. Sometimes people even consume this type of media not because they find it scary, but because they find it artistic or beautiful, maybe even thought-provoking. And this phenomenon, whether or not we're aware of it or not, has created a popularity when it comes to things the public has deemed as scary. Things that are seen with fear are ultimately met with a sort of natural curiosity, creating an opening for exploration and even understanding. Ironically enough, clowns, once seen as innocent and loving, morphed into something scary and creepy in the United States specifically, which I talk about in great detail in my How Horror Movies Made You Fear Clown Dolls video. But basically, this fear has overstayed its welcome, and it's now created a curiosity in people to seek out this fear. And due to this, we've created a now interesting environment where people who may have found clowns scary before now see clowns as entertaining. But with all of that aside, don't scary clowns go against what family-friendly clowns believe? Aren't scary or horror-leaning clowns bad for business? Can you be a scary clown and still be accepted by the clowning community? Unfortunately, there is a bit of a rift, and it would be disingenuous of me to pretend that there wasn't, because honestly, there are some performing clowns that work in family-friendly entertainment that don't like horror clowns, or that believe that horror clowns or scary clowns are making traditional clowning harder for them. Honestly, it sucks to be a clown and have to hear about the same things over and over again. Pennywise and John Wayne Gacy and other killer clown comments really are not something that you can escape. Some embrace it while others simply roll their eyes. I'm somewhere in the middle. I love fictional horror media, but the Gacy comments get exhausting. If I had a nickel for every time people made a pogo joke to me or told me that I should dress up as Pogo or thought that I don't know who Pogo was, I would probably have a significant amount of money, and that's just, I don't know, it's annoying after a while. Even in my real life, when I tell people I'm a clown, it's a bit of a toss-up on how they'll react. It's kind of 50-50. There's at least one person who will be like, yikes, that's scary, whoa, why would you want to do that? So from the perspective of a community clown that really is just trying to approach the art form of clowning from a fun and innocent standpoint, yeah, it can be frustrating. And when you add that the fear of clowning is uniquely much more American, the way that chorophobia pops up around it is exhausting. Imagine the job you had every day that you go to had just an entire group of people who start freaking out if they saw you doing it. It definitely can get tiring. This didn't help with the whole clown scare of 2016 either. Regular people were putting on cheap Amazon clown outfits and scaring everyone, and it's still widely believed to be just a hoax that went wrong for the movie advertising for the movie It. There was even a young woman on TikTok who made an innocent joke that her surgery scar was from the 2016 clown attacks, and people actually took this to be a real actual fact instead of satire. And so every time this video goes viral and people see it, the creepy legends come back to life, and the comments are full of like actual lies that people were attacked by clowns. But contrary to popular belief, no clowns, working clowns, were out murdering people and lurking around in 2016. And if people were scaring people or hurting people, they were doing it of their own accord. They were not doing it attached to working clowns. Working professional clowns had to actually come out and officially say and tell people that they had nothing to do with it, and the World Clown Association even went about issuing an official statement that they weren't involved and they had to denounce the creepy clowns. It ironically cost Ronald McDonald his job at the time, which thankfully has since been undone as clowns returned back into favor in the media. But there is still overlap between clowns working at birthday parties and events and clowns working at haunts. Some modern working clowns perform as both normal, family-friendly event clowns and then make the transition to horror clowns during September and October. It's a widely accepted form of entertainment, and it still falls under the giant umbrella of clowning. Many horror clowns also participate in their modern local clown alleys, and some even have their clown egg. This idea of clowns accepting other work isn't something new either. Back when clowns were mostly performers at the circus, they would do birthday and local work in the off seasons of the circus. So it makes sense as clowning evolves that where there's work, a clown will find it and fill it, and September and October are huge opportunities to do another type of steady gig work. It's also a huge misconception that clowning as a whole is just for children or just for happiness and just for laughs. Clowning has been used for adult themes throughout history, whether that's clowning routines with adult themes, burlesque clowning, or even plays with darker themes in the theater like depression, suicide, and unrequited love. At its most basic definition, clowning is just about entertaining others, and there's no distinction on what type of entertaining that truly is. Nowhere is it explicitly written that if you lean into adult themes as a clown, you simply aren't a good clown or a real clown. It's just a belief upheld in older clown spaces. I find most of the judgment about this topic, as someone who has experienced it because I've been too sexy, comes from people who aren't even in the clowning community, but perceive it from the outside. Those who think they know and are ignorant to the history of clowning are quicker to write off clowns that don't fall neatly into the definition of what they think clowns should be. There's also been a resurgence in puritanical beliefs around clowning that I've seen pop up a lot in places like TikTok, that a clown should only be this weird, sexless, whimsical jester caricature, and that if they deviate from this by being scary or sexy, they simply aren't good at being a clown. And this is something ironically I see upheld by younger people who aren't even working clowns. But Bouncy, doesn't being scary go against the clown code? There is some confusion when it comes to clown code. The clown code, better known as the Clown Code of Ethics, are a set of rules upheld by the Clowns of America International. But many official clown groups do follow them or rules like them. And the rules themselves were created for clowns working with the public, but more importantly, children, the elderly, and the sick. And for these groups, they apply certain rules to their entertainers to enforce things to stay clean and honorable. And so it makes sense to have performers uphold a certain set of rules. I myself follow clown code when I clown in real life as a persona unrelated to Bouncy, because this keeps things 100% family friendly and safe for all involved, especially dealing with minors, which is the biggest takeaway to these rules. It should be noted though that horror clowns have their own sort of codes. They follow certain rules when engaging with guests that keep them as a performer safe and the visitor safe at the haunts that they work at. But it's not a written rule that if you don't follow the clown code, you're a bad clown. In fact, according to clown code, most of the older circus acts and even famous circus clowns wouldn't even be following clown code today. Clowning didn't start to become cleaned up for children until after the late 1800s, and the entire reason was because they needed more people in the audience. So they thought if they included women and children and made circuses family affairs, then that in fact would be the way to bring in more money. And it worked. The circus rebrand would go on to influence how we see clowns and even circuses for decades. Performers that were once vulgar, loud, and even making sexual innuendos in their jokes were now toning things down for years to come. I would like to make a special note that performers who do family-friendly, clean entertainment have every right to keep their spaces clean and family-friendly and decide who to invite into those spaces in order to keep people safe. There should not be an overlap of adult themes in spaces where they are not welcomed or appropriate, and ignoring that or standing against that is in no way what I'm doing here. I'm just basically saying that there are a lot of different forms of clowning for different types of audiences, and there are more types of clowning than the ones we see as wholesome or correct. Unfortunately, there's a bit of a hierarchy within clowning itself anyways. The classically trained circus types differ from the European theater types, and those both differ from the folks doing birthday parties and hospital work. It's an art form stretched out in so many ways, and there's big feelings from many sides about what makes a clown and what that even means, to the point that defining a clown or clowning or clown as an art form are all different things with dozens of answers. So with all of this being said and covered, let's get more into the scary clowns. We see scare actors or haunt actors found in haunted attractions such as theme parks, haunted houses, and even haunted mazes during September and October. And a lot of these places have clown themes or clowns on site to evoke fear. But these clowns themselves have gone on to have their own fandoms. Starting all the way back in 2007, Universal would create a clown mascot for their Halloween Horror Nights called Jack the Clown, who would be their first original mascot. Jack would go on to be so iconic and loved over the next 20-ish years that in 2025, Universal would announce that he would be featured in a year-round attraction in Las Vegas at their Universal Horror Unleashed project, which would be a Halloween Horror Nights themed attraction, offering frightening fun all year. Within this attraction, they would create what is called Jack's Alley Bar, where Jack and his sidekick Chance will perform with their carnies. With such a change in the way people view clowns, many scare actors have actually found success from fans on social media. A good example of this being Bobbins, a performer at Knott's Scary Farm, the spooky Halloween variant of Knott's Berry Farm, and most recently on TikTok, a group of clown performers that worked together at Fear Zone went viral, and this even invoked a lot of thirsty comments from commenters and their own fan base. It's almost as if over the years, the tides have turned from scary clowns being scary to them interpreted as being a bit sexy to people, and at the least just fun to run into, with the scare actors embodying an array of fun clowning personas. With clown-themed haunts in so many different locations, spanning so many different areas, haunt actors keep things fun and silly and have really upped their game over the years. There are some amazing haunt actors out there who really shine once fall hits, and who have really put a lot of work into their clowning personas. Unfortunately, this turning tide of people seeing them as attractive and no longer scary has brought harassment to some of these actors, with some haunt actors being doxxed online and even touched inappropriately in real life, which has furthered the need for more safety precautions and rules amongst these performers in these spaces as they navigate working with the public. But when it comes to fictional clowns, there are a lot of different depictions of scary clowns in works of fiction. I won't name them all, but I will touch on a few of the notorious ones, most famously being Pennywise, the intergalactic, sometimes female spider, sometimes clown. Pennywise, who is responsible for generations of kids being afraid of clowns, is one of the most well-known and easily identifiable scary clowns out there. The original depiction, played by the ever-so-talented Tim Curry, was based more off of the traditional birthday party or TV clown, and the newer depiction, played by Bill Skarsgård, draws more upon European white-face clowning and even Grimaldi himself, which makes sense as the newer movie leans more into the history of Pennywise the Dancing Clown. You really can't have a discussion about scary clowns without mentioning Pennywise in some capacity. The irony about Pennywise, though, is that originally it was using Pennywise as a form to first lure in children, and children at the time that the book was written trusted clowns, so it made sense that if they saw a clown, they would talk to it as a trusted adult, and ultimately they'd be lured to their death. only to have the innocent clown turn into something beastly and scary, which was where the fear itself came from. Nowadays, with so many people fearing clowns, Pennywise would have to first camouflage itself as something kids would trust. So I imagine Pennywise nowadays would probably be like a popular streamer or something hanging out and inviting kids to be on stream, and then it would probably attack them and eat their fear. Pennywise is really just the tip of the spooky clown iceberg though, because of course you can't mention scary clowns without also mentioning Art the Clown. Art, whose appearance is derived more from a mix of a spirit Halloween clown costume and a Pierrot, is a controversial figure in horror itself. This is because the Terrifier series is quite brutal and gory, and I can definitely understand why people look at it and go, yikes. However, I do see that there are moments within the series where the actor who currently plays Art the Clown, David Thornton, really shines with his comedy, and I think it's that playfulness and some of those more absurd moments that have given the series such a huge uptick in popularity, and it really explains the love and obsession that fans have over Art the Clown himself.
There are a lot of horror clowns that we could list, and since this isn't a countdown video, I just wanted to go on the record and say my favorite horror movie that depicts a horror clown or has horror clowns in it or scary clowns is Killer Clowns from Outer Space. And the reason why is because I feel like it's the perfect example of taking clowning and really taking the stuff that makes clowning and combining it with horror as a medium. So in Killer Clowns, you have stuff like shadow puppets, puppetry, balloon dogs, and you have stuff like cotton candy cocoons. Like, there are so many whimsical things related to clowns that are put into the Killer Clowns movie and then kind of twisted up. And then the way that it's done, it's so silly, and like they're like alien/dinosaur based. Like, everything's very silly and bizarre, and sometimes that's the whimsical part of it. So that's just my favorite clown scary movie, and I love Spiky. I was actually Spiky for Halloween in 2022, and I collect Spiky stuff specifically, and I just wanted to like go on the record and say my favorite and shout that out because Killer Clowns is so good. And if you haven't seen it, there's a reason why it's sort of having like a renaissance right now. The past couple of years, it's really gotten a lot more popular. You can see more merch pop up in places like Spirit Halloween. There's been a video game. Like, it's really taking over, and the reason why I believe is because it's actually good. Like, it's worth the hype. So if you haven't seen Killer Clowns from Outer Space, I recommend it. Bouncy the Clown recommends Killer Clowns from Outer Space. Please watch it.
But in general, horror clowns in media and fiction tend to reflect the clowns of the past, using well-known depictions of clowns throughout history to create their own unique thing. And this phenomenon has created a huge legion of horror clown fans with giant shrines to popular horror clowns. And it doesn't make these fans less fans of clowns because they like Pennywise and Art than it does someone who likes Bozo and Lynette. And Bill Skarsgård and David Thornton aren't somehow worse clowns than David Arquette and Alice in Court just because they are doing different things in the clowning space. It's like saying you can't judge a fish by its ability to climb a tree or comparing apples to oranges. They're two different things within one main art form, and that's totally okay. We shouldn't be comparing them. Aesthetically, horror clowns use a lot of contrasting black and white with the occasional red, drawing from Pierrot, European white-faced clowning, and even mimes. Once you see it, you can't unsee it. They also use a lot of different themes to signify they're scary, like sharp teeth and blood coming from the mouth, and inhuman eye colors. Most famously seen on Pennywise, they capitalize on being unsettling, usually grinning like a Cheshire cat. Some horror clowns lean into looking more realistic and disfigured with the use of prosthetics, something we see from clowns like Twisty from American Horror Story Freak Show. There is a human element of something being sick or even maimed or in some kind of accident or some kind of transformation taking place that can evoke fear.
So because horror clowns and scary clowns are sort of their own unique medium and spin-off of clowning, you're going to see a lot of different variations in horror clown and scary clown makeup. Now, some people like to use prosthetics and lean into the more actually scarred face, but you do see a lot of really crazy extended mouths, and I do believe that this has some sort of tie-in to the Joker, as well as the under-eye triangle tear looking marks. This is very Joker-esque, and it is something that you will see with horror clowns. You also see a lot of spatter and X's and O's and swirls and stars, just a lot of things that you can see on a face and you think, wow, that's really edgy. There was also a documentary about John Wayne Gacy, who honestly I hate to mention at all in any video, but in the documentary it did touch on something that some of you may be familiar with, and that's that he used sharp corners when he did his clown makeup. In the documentary, they basically explained that he used sharp corners when he did his clown makeup, and this could have been some kind of look into his psyche and how he actually was very unapproachable, and it was sort of a little bit off-putting to people to look at. Now, this isn't always true that clowns should avoid using sharp corners. There are traditional and classic clowns that do use sharp corners, but sharp corners do kind of portray a little bit of a menacing feeling to people. So the documentary was actually right about that. And you will see a lot more sharp corners with horror clowning. Also in horror clowning and scary clowning, another thing that's implemented is masks. There are a lot of scary and different masks out there, and clown masks I think are valid for this medium. If you're running around a haunt all day and you are hiding and jumping out and scaring people, it might be better to wear a mask. It might be less hot. So I can definitely see that as also being valid. As far as horror clowning and scary clowning goes, I do feel like it's messier and more fun, and it's a lot more forgiving as a makeup style. So in traditional clowning, usually the simpler the better, and sometimes you can kind of tell how good a clown is or how long a clown has been clowning by how good their makeup is, their lines, the way that it's very simplistic. This is things that you look for in traditional clowning. There are even competitions that go in and look at clowns' faces, but with horror clowns, with scary clowns, it's so much more forgiving because it's fun to be messy. So you can go in and you can do crazy eyes and mess up a little bit and get a little bit crazy, and it's just gonna make your horror clown or your scary clown look even better. Like, it's such a vibe. So if you want to get into clowning and you're a little bit intimidated and you're like, I don't know if I have what it takes or whatever, try doing a scary clown look or try doing a sort of Joker type makeup. It kind of will help to start there. I think actually one of the very first clown looks I ever did in my adulthood, since I did clown in my childhood, was I did sort of a Joker look like I'm doing now, except I didn't do the crazy mouth. And yeah, these are some cornerstones of haunt and scary clown makeup.
With trends like Clowncore taking over social media, there has also been an uptick in people that live their lives dressing as clowns and clown fashions because they are inspired by the aesthetics of clowning. Not necessarily performing as clowns, but using them as inspiration for makeup and fashion. And this has leaked into all sorts of different communities, hobbies, and even other types of art forms. And even Clowncore itself has its own offshoots, with people doing things like jestercore. In the music space, clowning as an aesthetic is becoming more and more relevant, with artists like Chapel Roan, Madeline May, and even Ash Nico. And these artists tend to draw their inspirations from traditional clowning. While we see other musical artists, like for instance The Garden, indirectly get their black and white clown face inspiration from Pierrot, jesters, and mimes. And of course, it wouldn't be a conversation about clowns and music without mentioning, at least briefly, the Insane Clown Posse, whose fans have been painting on heavily contrasted clown makeup for years. The Juggalos, historically on the fringes of society, have also made friends with the goth kids. At least this was my experience in high school. And in some cases, they are the goth kids themselves, which makes for a fun overlap between non-traditional clowning, goth music and fashion, and clowning itself. I have the privilege of being friends with a musical artist in the clown community who is named Klowniac, and I've invited them to speak about clowning from their own perspective. Klowniac, who spells clown with a K, as both an homage to killer clowns from outer space and a way to differentiate their clowning from traditional clowns and separate their audiences to keep the traditional clowning space safe and divided yet equal, is a musician who has really taken clowning to a different level. So here is a word from Klowniac on this topic.
I feel like the whole purpose to being a clown is to spread joy, to ignite a sense of awe and wonder and captivate our audience, to remind them that the world is a magical place that's full of variety, and that includes a variety of clowns. There's so many different types of clowns because people derive joy in so many different ways. Some people enjoy the thrill of being scared, and that's where horror clowns come in. I have the privilege of being a gateway clown because I'm not technically a horror clown. As a goth clown, I definitely embody the horror clown or dark clowncore aesthetic, and I do this to challenge people's perceptions. Like, I understand that a lot of people are afraid of clowns, but you would be surprised at the immense amount of people that tell me that I'm excluded from that, or that me or my content has actually helped them get through their coulrophobia. Despite how I might look, I'm not actually scary. However, even the scary clowns have come across this strange phenomenon where people that are afraid of clowns aren't actually afraid of the ones of us that look scary. After actually talking to these people, I have learned a lot of people that are afraid of clowns aren't actually afraid of them because of horror movies or haunt clowns or clowns that look scary like us, but rather because we fall into a category called the uncanny valley. You see, there's this deep primal psychology behind this that I can explain. Clowns can inadvertently trigger fear in people because phobias are passed down genetically, typically as a means of protection against potential threats or things that could be potentially hazardous to our health. Where do clowns fall in this? I'm glad you asked. In nature, most things that are brightly colored are considered toxic or poisonous or venomous. Bright, intricate colors are to serve as a warning to predators or prey to let them know that they are dangerous. White face or extremely pale skin with exaggerated features or missing eyebrows or hair are typically indicative of a sickness or an illness, or that someone is contagious or possibly diseased. So there's an evolutionary predisposition to try to avoid being around people that exhibit those traits. Also, again, like a wide mouth would be indicative that something is bigger than you or a predator because it can consume you. So there's that fear there as well. All of these little things together can elicit a fear response in a lot of people. Also, if you'll consider that like clowns put on a personality, that can come off as ingenuine to some people, or like you're hiding something. And that can also raise a couple of fear flags in people. There's a lot of reasons as to why some people might find clowns terrifying. And I think it's unfair to place all of that blame onto horror clowns. Like, just because we're not for children doesn't make us any less of clowns. We still do what we do to spread joy. And in essence, that's what a clown is supposed to do. There is, unfortunately, a lot of controversy surrounding clowns and regarding horror clowns and it making it difficult for them to get work. But I personally feel that controversy is misguided. As I've said before, there's so many different types of clowns because people derive joy in many different ways, and that's what we're here for. I spell clown with a K not to divide us or to say that more adult-oriented clowns are any different than kids' party clowns. It's more so to try to give them their own space so that people don't inadvertently come across us while looking for them. We're all clowns, and we're here to spread joy, safely and consensually. That's kind of it. Rather than fighting each other or sectioning each other off into categories about who does or doesn't fit in whatever place and worrying about all the things that make us different, we should instead focus on what we do for others and that joy that brings us all together. Whether you're a haunt clown, a party clown, a spicy clown, or a rodeo clown, what have you, I feel like the sooner we realize that we all have that joy in common, the better clowns we can all become. I don't know how to end this.
I could go on and on about the validity of scary clowns, horror clowns, and goth clowns that lean into a horror aesthetic, but I think you guys get the point, as Klowniac pointed it out so eloquently.
Thank you all so much for listening in and understanding how vast and interesting clowning can be. Whether or not you love horror or you hate horror, I think we can all understand now that horror clowns do have a place in clowning, and just because you might not be the target audience doesn't mean there's not a target audience out there. So I had so much fun talking about this, and I hope you have a wonderful day.